This is the Engl Savage 120 guitar amp plugin from Brainworx, Plugin Alliance, and now Native Instruments. So we're going to go over the interface, see how to use it, check out what all these buttons and knobs do. But before we do that, I want to show you some of the possible sounds from the Engl Savage 120. Start off with clean. Very cool. Go to crunch 1. Boost that input. Pretty cool. Switch channels. All right, so that is just a quick look at the two main channels and the 4 different modes. So this is, you can think of it as a 4-channel amp. It's actually, it's 2 main channels, but they're broken out into 4 different, overall sounds. So we do have our clean, although it's not really that clean. You also have a crunch 1, a crunch 2, and then a super overdrive lead. Now let's start over here on the left. So on the synths, that's going to, let's actually go to maybe a different sample here. So let's just play this. We'll head over here to the clean. Now to switch your channels, I should probably explain that. You have a channel selector here. As you can see, it's switching between these 2 channels. So right now it's clean volume, and then here is the crunch 2 volume. And then you use the button here in the middle to switch between your 2 different modes for that channel. So over to the crunch 1 there, or switch down here and go over to the lead there. Okay, so up here on channel 1, we use our synths. It's going to end up boosting that input. You can really hear that on the crunch here. Let me turn this off, and then I'll turn it on as we play. Then you have a bright, so obviously that's going to make things brighter on the input there. Then you have your gain for your main channel 1, and then your gain for your main channel 2. You also have a Preshape, and that boosts the bass and treble and cuts the mid-range in the 300 to 1200 hertz range. So you can hear that if you want. So there, with it turned off, it's going to be boosting the, the overall mid-range there. If I go down to maybe something a little cleaner. Boosting that bass and the treble there. Then, of course, your crunch 1 gain for your crunch 1 channel. Now, as I said, this doesn't really get super clean. I can just show you this here. Try to clean it up here. Now, keep in mind, whatever, impulse response you have loaded is going to make a huge, huge difference to your overall sound, okay? So not super clean, but, Then you have your tone stack, pretty simple stuff, right? Your bass, your mid, your treble. Then we have a contour. And the contour in the off position will boost the lower mid-range around 500 hertz, and in the on position, when the light is lit up, it boosts the upper mid-range from 1200 hertz and upwards, and it cuts the lower mid-range. Now we also have a contour down here for the second main channel, so just keep that in mind. If you want to boost that upper mid-range and cut the lower mid-range, turn that on. If you want more of that lower mid-range, just leave it off. Different sounds overall. can really hear it on the crunchy side here. All right, then we have our clean volume, our crunch one volume, and we've already seen the clean crunch selector. Then we have presence A and presence B and a depth boost for both of these channels. So essentially you can set up different presence settings and then switch between them with this button right there. Okay, just switch, you know, if you have a rhythm section, which you want a certain presence setting at, then you have a lead section or a clean section where you want the presence to be different. You can set that up and just quickly switch between them as such. Let's go to maybe this faster riff here. Let's get this gain up here a bit. All right. So right now, of course, we're on presence A. And then if I had presence B down here, I could switch over to that sound. Of course. Then we have the depth boost, and this is going to boost it around 80 hertz, so it can get kind of muddy. And you'll really hear that depth boost once we get into the other channel. So let's just move on to that. So obviously the gain here is going to be for our main channel 2, pretty simple to figure out. You have your lead boost, which changes the degree of the gain for the lead channel here whenever you switch this over to the let me change the channel first, switch over to the lead there. And then the contour, same thing as the previous contour. You have your tone stack, we all know what that does. Then you have a rough and a smooth. Don't worry, we're going to go through this. I'm going to play through some different samples, but I just want to get through this as quickly as we can here. So for our rough and our smooth, it switches between two completely unique overdrive characteristics. The rough, when it's turned off, it's on the rough. That's going to emphasize the high and the low end. And the smooth emphasizes the mid-range and suppresses the gritty upper frequency. So let's check that out here on a couple of these heavier riffs here. So again, we're switched over to right now on our crunch 2. Overall gain here. So of course, turn that down, you're not gonna hear anything. Contour. And then our rough and our smooth, I'll turn that on. Now, whenever you turn on the smooth, you have access to the high balance. And of course, this is going to balance the overall treble, okay? But it only works if it's turned on. So it works in conjunction with the overall treble here. If I turn that down, turn off that depth boost. So you have so many different settings that you can get, so many different sounds that you can get with this amp here. If I switch over to the lead there, then we have this lead gain that we can use and the lead boost. Of course, that's in conjunction with the overall gain for that main channel 2. Now I'll put in that depth boost again. So that can get really boomy on that low end. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. It really kind of depends on the cabinet that you choose back here in your effects rack. Okay, then we have our master A and master B, kind of the same stuff here that we did with the presence A and presence B. Say you have your main riff, your rhythm playing that you want at a certain level, then you want your lead at a certain level. You can just set those up and switch between them on the fly. All right, then you have a standby, which is just gonna bypass it. Right now, I should also mention up here at top, you can change the size of the interface. So if it's a little too small at 100, just click up here and make that a little bit larger. Then we'll head into the effects rack. We can either just click here or just click on the actual grill That will take us to the effects rack. And if you have other Plug-in Alliance or BrainWorx amps, you probably already know how this part works. So over here we have a noise gate. Everybody knows what a noise gate does. You can just set the threshold and the overall range or how much it's going to pull that down. You know, if you're palm muting or something and you want it to close down the gate so there's no amp noise, just set that up. Of course, turn it off right there as well. Then you have your tight and your smooth settings. Again, if you have other Plug-in Alliance amps, you already know how this works. So we can set this to post, which means after the amp, both the tight and the smooth, or we can set it to pre, which is, say, the incoming signal, or we can set it to off. Now, these are basically like high cut, low cut filters, all right? So right now it's on post for the tight, so I can pull out bottom end. So if I turn on this depth boost and really boost the bass even. We can tighten up that low end. Again, that's on post. If I want to put it on pre, it's going to deal with the incoming signal, which might be useful for 7, 8, 9 string guitars. You might want to tighten up some of that really low frequencies before it actually hits the amp. It's going to give you an overall different sound. Or off. All right, same thing for the smooth, except for the top end. So if I want to cut out some annoying fizz, maybe. Or put it on pre. Or off. Whatever you want to just get the exact sound that you want. I'll leave it on post and just kind of clamp down a bit on that super high end so it's not too fizzy there. Same thing for the bottom end, just tighten up that bottom end just a bit. Over here we have a built-in delay, which is pretty cool to have that built in. Let's actually go to a preset up here. Just grab that. Right. So to set the time, we can just choose in milliseconds. We can tap, or we can, it's synced to our DAW. So we can also choose time divisions in here. So quarter, eighth, etc., etc. Overall mix, your feedback, and then you have a lo-fi, which kind of just adds a bit of grittiness, texture to it. Okay, so hopefully you know how a delay works. We turn that on or off for whenever you need it. Then we have an input gain, so you can change the overall input gain here, which I'm not going to do. It's pretty self-explanatory what that does. You can bypass the preamp if you want. Let me change channels here. Bypass the preamp or bypass the power amp. Obviously it's going to be very low if you have the power amp bypassed, but maybe you want to send this out to a real amp or a real power amp or something, you can do that. Then you have a power soak, leave it on the default, which is -10 most of the time. But if you want to pull this down and then really just kind of just drive everything, then you can really do that with your power soak there. If you want to do that for some reason. But again, -10 is where you're going to leave it most of the time there. Okay, now over to the heart of all of the Plug-in Alliance or the BrainWorx amps, and that is the recording chain. So what these are actually impulse responses of actual cabinets, actual microphones, and we can actually see what mics they are, what cabinets they are by clicking the RC info. We can see that this recording chain is the Mesa Boogie rectifier cabinet with the microphone or microphones that they used, the preamp and the EQ, okay? So we can click in here, choose one. And like I said, at the top, it's going to be radically different. You might set something up in your tone stack, but it can be radically different once you change your recording chain. You can also use just these plus and minus. So that's the Engl cabinet there with the Sennheiser MD421 and a ribbon microphone, the Royer R121, a Neve preamp, Neve EQ. So all in all, you have about 100 or so of these different recording chains. Let's switch over here. That's a nice one right there. So if you happen to be playing guitar, kind of trying to figure out which recording chain that you want to use, they also have this feature in all of the different Brainworx amps where you can set this to auto and then select your time. So 1 bar, 2 bars, up to 8 bars. And whenever you're just playing your guitar, it will automatically switch the recording chain for you. So if we just turn that on, it'll switch automatically. Okay, pretty cool feature to have, again, when you're just kind of jamming out, trying to figure out which cabinet and microphones that you want to use. Let me put this back on 63. That's probably my favorite one there. All right, but if you want to use your own impulse responses, you can just turn the RC or the recording chain off, and then it's going to sound awful, but then you can use whatever impulse response loader that you want with your Engl Savage 120. Okay, so that's all of the controls, a lot of controls in these amps, especially on this one here with all these different buttons. So I'll just go through and I'll just kind of set things up on some of these different samples that we have here. Bit much for me. That's better. Okay, here we have a sort of a harmony. So for that, I think I'll go to maybe one of these vintage chains, which is using one of the vintage cabinets. I think it fits it a little bit better. Then turn on the delay, pop that on, pull this up, mix it, feedback, turn this down a bit. Okay, and then we'll also switch over to maybe the clean of the crunch here. That's pretty cool, right? Cool, then we have a lead. That's pretty cool. We've already heard this riff several times. Maybe change the recording chain to a Mesa cabinet. Boost. And I change my tone stack here for this here. Maybe like that. Again, don't forget your tight and your smooth filters there. It's a pretty cool one. Contoured. Again, like I said, you can get radically different sounds from this amp. Switch back over here. Try this bluesy. In this case, I turn that treble down, the presence down, middle up, bass up. And turn this on here. Like I said, tons of different sounds you can get with this amp here. All depends on the cabinet. There we go. Or if you want it more crunchy, we could do that. Very cool. Let's go back to our hard riff and we'll go back to channel 2 here. Of course, let me turn off that delay first. It's a Marshall cabinet. Way too much. Again, it just depends on what you're playing, on what sort of cabinet you're going to choose. But you even have orange cabs way down here at the bottom, 2x12s. That's a nice one. That's probably my favorite one right here. Okay, so that is it, folks. That is the Engl Savage 120 from BrainWorx, Plugin Alliance, and now part of Native Instruments. As you saw there in the video, it's capable of a huge, wide variety of of different sounds, from sort of clean-ish. I don't want to say it gets super clean because it doesn't, but sort of a clean-ish sort of sounds, to crunchy, overdriven sounds, to extremely overdriven sounds. It's the Engl Savage 120 is really a staple in the metal world, and you really can't go wrong when using this amp, especially if it's modeled by Plugin Alliance BrainWorx, because they make the absolute best amp plugins out there. So if you want to pick this up for yourself, it's available at an array of different places these days, either directly on their website, or even Plugin Boutique now has all of the Plugin Alliance or the BrainWorx amps are now at Plugin Boutique, and I think even Sweetwater has them. So you have an array of choices, an array of places that you can purchase this from. I'll be sure to have links in the description below if you want to pick this one up for yourself. Again, you really can't go wrong with this amp if you're into metal, rock, or anything like that. It's just, it has a unique sound that's different from, say, the E646 VS, which we've reviewed years ago, and the E765 RT, which we reviewed, or even like the Diesel Herberts, the Diesel VH4. The Savage 120 really has its own sound. It does sound sort of savage. It can sound kind of raw, especially once you're on that rough setting, which I kind of prefer that rough setting. Listen to that again. If you want that death metal sound, contour it, pull your mids out more. You can really get a sound for any type of metal that you're into. So I highly recommend this amp. Again, if you want to pick it up for yourself, I'll be sure to have links in the description below. Once again, that is the Engl Savage 120 from BrainWorx.